Something smells in Snake Mountain. Here's your look at the new Mattel Master Universe Origins Stinkor, Evil Master of Odors. The sickening foul stench of Stinkor can even bring the mightiest of Eternia's heroes to their knees. As Stinkor stinks up the place, we're going to move the figure over and do a couple of size comparisons. For the obvious reason of the mold being used from this guy, we're going to bring in the original Merman. Stinkor has always been a reused mold from the original Merman figure, and of course he has different armor that we'll talk about more in a second, but you can clearly see that they're using the same body as they did with the original vintage figure as well. Let's bring in some other figures like Trapjaw. We'll bring in also Skeletor. And for this Skeletor, no, this isn't the Skeletor from this wave. I've just used the Skeletor with the head sculpt from the Battle Armor Skeletor, even though I think the vintage-looking Skeletor from Wave 5 is pretty much going to be the exact same head sculpt as the one that we got with the Battle Armor version. And we can also bring in Evil Lyn as well. Yes, Stinkor fits in rather nicely with all the rest of the vintage Origins figures that we've looked at so far. Of course, the only difference between him and the others not only is his color, but also the fact that he emits a rather pungent-smelling odor. Checking out the stuff that comes included with Stinkor. First of all, you get a brand new comic, providing I can actually pick it up. This one is entitled Rock in a Hard Place, and it clearly seems that He-Man is stuck between the two. Not sure of the look on his face, but I have to say, like, the artwork is really nice on this. Advertised on the back of the comic are the characters in this wave, which also feature the brand new He-Man and Skeletor, which is basically the original Origins bodies with just brand new head sculpts, and those head sculpts are the ones we got from the Battle Armor versions. Really, there's nothing much different other than the fact that you're going to be getting double-sided swords. I have actually picked up this He-Man, even though I know on paper, and me just finished saying that, it doesn't seem like it's almost even worth the price of picking up another He-Man if you're basically getting the same things, but call me crazy, I did also want to get that double-sided sword. I didn't get the Skeletor yet. That might be something I still decide to purchase. But all the rest of the figures that we are featured on the back here are figures that we're going to be looking at in some upcoming reviews. So stay tuned for that. By the way, as a side note, Stinkor and Webstore, some of my all-time favorite He-Man characters, right up there with Mosquitor, which I've just finished having a look at. The inside of the comic, by the way, graced... Well, first of all, the fact I bought this online, I was graced with the fact that they actually have word bubbles. So I don't need to use my imagination to try to figure out what's going on here. It's nice to see, actually, that Webstore is making an appearance on the inside of the comics, as well as several Fakors. Keep on, always put an OR. It's really technically Faker. I always feel like I want to call them Fakor. And you can see there's the Eternian Goddess on the inside there as well. Some nice artwork again on these mini comics. I always like to hold on to these and keep them in my personal collection. So I can add now Rock in a Hard Place to all the rest of the comics that we've been looking at so far. Stinkor also comes included with a shield. It's a nice looking shield based on the original vintage design. I like the color of blue, certainly, that they used, and while blue doesn't make an appearance anywhere else on the rest of the figure, it is certainly a nice looking shield to have on display with him. Now, the figure, based on the way his hands are designed, he has one flat hand, and he has one gripping hand. So you can kind of already imagine which way it's going to go. It's going to go on this side. And you just fit the fingers in between the handle and the shield. And he's basically going to hold the shield like this. It's kind of an awkward way for him to be holding a shield as opposed to the shield not being further up on his arm. But at least he does come included with an accessory. I know you guys are probably going to know right off the bat the question you're going to be throwing to me, and I can hear you saying it right now. How does he smell? That's, of course, the gimmick that was on the original vintage toy, which I never really had in my collection as a kid growing up. And how does the smell work? Because after all, that's going to be the gimmick on the newer toy. Well, I will say, first of all, it's not as strong of a smell as you may think it's going to be. In fact, several passes my nose has made to the plastic before shooting this review. I was trying to figure out what the smell was. It isn't skunk smell. So if you think it's going to be like a really pungent skunk odor, it's not. It smells closer to being like artificial plastic. I was trying to, again, think of what I would describe the smell as being. I'm going to take one more pass with my nose. Bear with me. Short of the fact I would say it just smells like, sometimes when you get really stinky figures, not fingers, figures, you take them out of their plastic prison. The stink and smell of that artificial plastic kind of is what Stinkor smells like. He actually kind of smells like also a really cheap gas station, a car freshener, like an air freshener you'd hang in your car. It smells like it could be just a slight trace of lemon smell. but it sort of smells like a really cheap artificial car air freshener. Does that help at all? It probably doesn't. If you do have this figure, if you've picked up the new Stinkor, certainly let me know down below in the comment section. What smell? How would you describe the smell? It's certainly one of those problem things that if somebody was to say, well, what does the figure smell like? It's kind of hard unless you can know right away. Okay, yeah, it smells exactly like... If it smelled like strawberries, I could say, hey, it smells like strawberries. But the only thing I can kind of come up with is artificial, really, really cheap artificial car air freshener that kind of smells slightly like lemon. Slightly like lemon. That being said, let's get a closer look now at Stinkor. Now, again, all the body that we've seen already on Stinkor is basically a reused body from the original Merman. And you can see, like, the head sculpts are exactly the same. The arms also are exactly the same. Same with hands. Hands are exactly the same. And also the lower half, too, identical to one another. Where there is certainly the differences between the two. Merman, you remember, had this aquarium-looking armor that he had all molded in yellow. Well, actually, Stinkor has armor that will eventually be used for Mechanic. This is the same armor that they use for Mechanic. So again, the fact that we are teased now with this armor, you gotta believe that at some point we are going to be getting a Mechanic figure. And I wonder if it's going to have. The Mechanic was a figure I had as a kid, and he had the rotating waist that you could, his neck would go up and down. I would imagine they're probably going to keep that same gimmick in place. So yes, this armor piece is something that we're probably going to be getting with a Mechanic at some point down the road. The head sculpt, I have to say, works quite well here for Stinkor. Despite being more just a dark color black with nice streaks of white, I actually think that the head sculpt on Stinkor, not a helmet, but the head sculpt I find always looked better on Stinkor than I thought it did on Merman. Probably for the fact, too, that the original Lords of Power, Merman had such a better looking head sculpt, all things considered. And Merman never really looked like this in the cartoon either. Stinkor, though, I think works and takes the mold and runs with it, I think better, on his end at least. Now, the one thing, unfortunately, they didn't do was they didn't paint the teeth. So the teeth are the same black color as the rest of his face, where at least Merman benefited from having the lighter yellow used for his teeth. They weren't just kept to that same teal plastic as the rest of his body and head. I have to say as well, the eyes work quite well, too. The eyes are different, too, whereas Merman has the pupils in the middle of his eyes. He has more like slits, almost like he should be a cat. Even though he's not really a cat, he's supposed to be a skunk. I do like the stripes. The stripes work really, really well, especially when you consider that the figure is so dark and black plastic. The stripes really lend to add a lot of additional pops of color, even though you don't technically consider white to be a color, but it does have some really nice white treatment done on the back. Paint's actually pretty good on this head sculpt, too. Things that certainly would be problematic on figures would be the way they would paint in the fur streaks, but yet, you know, looking at it, it's pretty good, I have to say, all things considered. Now, you could technically remove the torso piece as well. It's just a softer plastic. You just have to detab it from the one side. Just underneath it, it's just a basic regular body. So he doesn't have any additional color, just in case you're curious. No, there's no additional color on the inside. So real no reason for me to want to take that off completely. I'm just going to tab that back into place just on the side. Soft plastic, of course. The armor does have some additional color, so it's not just straightly the orange. Slightly more of a darker orange that they've used for the front area here, and kind of like the area where it kind of serves to be like a respirator or breathing part for his armor. Works quite well, because I would imagine that Stinkor, probably his smell is so foul, he probably doesn't even want to smell it himself. Nice dark red used for the hands. It's not quite the same red, because clearly they've used the plastic for the hands that they've painted in the tops of his gloves, but it's pretty close, all things considered. The lower underoos, the furry underoos, as you can see, more of the orange color that matches his armor. And the belt is similar in color to this part that they painted in there as well. And he still has like the monster feet, something that both Skeletor and Merman have. Again, a really, really nice looking figure. I'm really, really happy with how this one works. Does the gimmick live up to that foul stench that, I mean, for me as well, even opening up the plastic that first time before I started hitting the record button, I was thinking to myself, is the whole room going to smell now like skunk? And again, it doesn't really smell like skunk. It smells like cheap car air freshener. I hope somebody can actually tell me in a better description of what the smell is they think that it is when they have their Stinkor with them. Anyways, though, looking at the articulation here on Stinkor, his head rotates all the way around. Because, of course, the armor is a little further away from his head. I mean, it doesn't limit at all moving his head forward and back. And then again, back and forth this way as well. Arms hinge out. Same regular articulation as all the other figures that we've looked at so far for the Masters of Universe Origins line. Arms rotate all the way around. Single hinge on the elbow rotates the forearm as well. Hands rotate all the way around as well. And you can hinge those back and forth. Straight swivel on the waist. That's it. That's all you're going to get. Legs hinge out. You can bring them forward and bring them back. A single hinge on the knee. Lower leg rotation. The boot technically rotates as well, the way it was assembled as being a separate part for the rest of the figure's body. And you can also move the feet back and forth this way, as well as an ankle pivot. Let's go ahead and get the shield back into Stinkor's hand. It's not the most practical of shields, but at least he does have something he can hold in his hand. Yeah, I was really excited for this line. Admittingly, I'm not as crazy about the Lords of Power Beastman. We'll still, of course, look at him in a future video. But both Stinkor and Webstore are some of my personal favorites as kids. I never really had. I think I had Webstore. Never really had Stinkor, which was sad because I really would have liked to pick up the figure and actually see in hand whether the smell was as bad as they would advertise. And again, there he is next to his mold brother, Merman. You know, still taking the colors, changing them from the one that we got here from Merman, it still looks like a brand new character. Something, again, that Masters of the Universe have always been known for doing. Reusing molds, reusing armors. And between those two, when you mix and match them, you can get brand new characters. And case in point here, when we look at the brand new Stinkor. Still, I'm trying to come up with a way to describe the smell for Stinkor. It sometimes reminds me also, if you've ever picked up like blind bag, really, really soft, squishy toys, you know, like those little collectibles that you find inside blind bags, kind of the smell that goes along with those. Still, I'm drawing a blank. What's interesting, though, is the reaction of the girl on the back of the packaging. That face is priceless. You'll also notice just below the rather disgusted girl, you'll see that the shield is actually on the other side of Stinkor's body. It's in the other hand. You technically could put it in his other hand, too, but it looks more like he's pointing the shield than he's actually holding the shield. So you could technically have the shield on either side. Advertised also, another thing I can draw your attention to at the very top of the packaging, right next to the Stinkor, there's Mossman. So you got to think as well, being that they've teased so many of these characters on the back of the packaging and then ... down the road, we get that character get released. Being that Mossman is advertised on the back and he's using the same body as Beastman, you got to think, yeah, Mattel's going to be throwing out a Beastman. Whether he's actually going to come with the flocking, though, I certainly hope so. We've already been teased with flocking on Panther. I certainly hope at the very least that we're going to get flocking on Mossman. Flocking on Mossman. I love the look of Stinkor. Even though, yeah, he's using the same body as Merman, he does enough different things. Not only with the different change of color, the different armor that's teasing Mechanic down the road, and he does get himself a shield. Merman never came with a shield. He came with that corncob sword. I know it wasn't really a corncob sword. I really, again, like the look of Stinkor. And I'm glad also, too, that the smell wasn't too strong. Because if I do put this guy on a shelf in a smaller closed-in space, I don't want people who are walking in the room thinking, why does this room reek? And I have to keep reassuring them. No, it's not me. And I haven't left anything there to sour or spoil. It's actually my Stinkor figure. Oh, right. Yeah, it's your Stinkor figure. I guess for obvious reasons, too, you really don't want a figure to smell like skunk. Don't have to tell you really some reasons why, but you really don't want a room to smell like skunk either. So for that obvious reasons, they went with more the artificial plastic smell. Again, it's one of those cases where you have to have the figure in your hand to kind of understand what I'm talking about. Nice looking Stinkor, though. Really glad to see that he got released in this wave, along with Webstore, another personal favorite of mine. Have you picked up Stinkor? If you have, please help me. Please. Let me know down below, how would you describe the smell? Because I know I really failed at describing it in this video. How would you describe the smell? And what do you think of the figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. If you guys are also new to this channel, enjoying the content you're seeing, loving the fact that we're doing so many Masters of the Universe Origins figures. There's a whole bunch of them, by the way. I've already covered all the waves up to this point. I've had a look at every single figure. So if you guys wanted to go back and check out my reviews, just a shameless plug, there's a playlist available. Should be right probably popping up at the end of this video that will show you Master of the Universe Origins. Check that out if you want to. If you want to, at least, of course. But make sure as well, you're hitting that subscribe button down below. You turn on the bell notification, and that, yeah, you're making sure you're coming back, because even though we have finished the review of Stinkor, Webstore will be coming up in the upcoming review, Eternian Goddess and Beastman, the Lords of Power Beastman. So lots of stuff coming your way, guys. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.